Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world, one book at a time. So let's just jump right in with a huge question, maybe one of the biggest. How do you actually defeat a dictator? When we think about it, our minds usually go to the same places, right? Violent rebellion, guerrilla warfare. Maybe we just cross our fingers and hope for some foreign intervention. But here's the thing, and this is what political scientist Gene Sharp really drills down on. The reality is, well, it's pretty grim. The oppressor, they almost always have the upper hand with firepower. That means immense casualties. And that hero coming to save the day from the outside, yeah, they might not become. So that leaves us in a pretty tough spot. But what if we're looking at this all wrong? What if the problem isn't the tools we're using, but our fundamental understanding of where a dictator's power even comes from in the first place? And that's exactly where Gene Sharp's incredible book, From Dictatorship to Democracy, steps in. It offers a totally radical and, honestly, a surprisingly practical new way to look at this ancient problem. And this quote from Sharp, man, it just sums up his entire idea perfectly. Liberation from dictatorships ultimately depends on the people's ability to liberate themselves. Think about that for a second. That's a huge shift, right? It's not about waiting around for someone else to fix things. It's about realizing the power that's already there, within the people themselves. Okay, so if the power is with the people, where does a ruler's power come from? This is Sharp's big idea. He says, look, political power isn't some kind of magic that a ruler just has. It's a relationship. The power of any ruler, and I mean any, depends completely on the cooperation, the submission, and the obedience of the people they rule. And get this, even just sitting back and passively accepting things, that counts as cooperation. All right, to really get a handle on this, let's use a metaphor. Picture a dictatorship, but don't picture it as like a solid stone monolith that's impossible to move. Instead, think of it as a huge structure, a building, that's being held up by a handful of really important pillars. So what are these pillars holding the whole thing up? Well, Sharp points to 6 key sources of power. First, you've got authority. This is the big one. It's just the belief that the regime is legitimate, that it has the right to rule. Then there are the human resources, the actual people who obey orders and help the rulers out. After that comes skills and knowledge, all the abilities that cooperating groups bring to the table. Of course, there's material resources, control over the money, the economy, all that stuff. And then there are the intangible factors, which are super important. These are the psychological reasons people obey, things like habit or just plain fear. And last but not least, you've got sanctions, the threat of punishment if you step out of line. These 6 things, that's the foundation. So here's the logical leap, and it's absolutely crucial. If all that power is granted by people cooperating with these pillars, well, then it can be withdrawn by people choosing to stop cooperating. You can start to weaken those pillars. You can crack them. You can even pull them out entirely. There's actually a great old fable that illustrates this whole idea perfectly. So the story goes, there's this monkey master who totally exploits a whole troop of monkeys. He forces them to gather all this fruit for him, and then he takes the lion's share for himself. And he does it all with the threat of punishment. So the monkeys, they suffer, right? But they're too scared to complain. They just obey. But then one day, a little monkey asks this world's changing question. He just turns to the others and asks, hey, why do we have to serve him? And all the other monkeys just stop and think about it. I mean, did he plant the trees? Nope. Could they just go take the fruit themselves? Yep. And in that moment, it clicks. The master's power wasn't real. It was something they were giving him through their cooperation. And that one little question just changes the whole game. It's like a light bulb goes on for all of them. That night, they just leave. They walk out of the compound and never come back. And the monkey master? Well, without their labor, which was his only source of power, he's left with absolutely nothing. His authority was just an illusion they'd all agreed to believe in. And that story, right there, that is the essence of what Gene Sharp calls nonviolent struggle. See, it's not just about holding up a sign and protesting. It's a strategic system. It's about systematically pulling your support from those pillars of power we talked about. And this simple idea, it really changes everything. Resistance is no longer some kind of moral plea like, please, Mr. Dictator, be a better person. No. It becomes a practical contest, a real direct struggle over the actual sources of power that keep the whole regime running. It's about strategy, not just morality. So this leaves us with a pretty heavy question, one that's really personal. If a dictator's power only exists because of our cooperation, Even if it's just our quiet, passive acceptance, then what does that say about our own responsibility? What part do we play in either holding up these systems or taking them down? This has been a mini explainer on From Dictatorship to Democracy by Gene Sharp. Crisis in Perception is free to watch and listen to. Supporters on Patreon help fund the research and production that make this work possible. For the full long-form deep dive into this book and its ideas, follow the link in the description. If you enjoy these explainers, please subscribe and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.